What's a happening, nerds? This is Sean nerding out with cards, and I know it seems like I'm doing like video like day after day after day, but I just have so much like pent up video ideas, things I wanted to get to, and that's kind of what tonight's going to be. So this is like a long time coming, and so I think Rob over at Commenting Collector, he was doing like this VR for make your fantasy lineup. It was part of a giveaway, which I think is come and gone, but I really don't care about that. I just thought it was kind of like a really cool, fun idea. Like, okay, come up with a lineup that would just be like if you had your way, right? And so I've seen a whole bunch of people's, and they've kind of like put their own little twists on it here and there. There's like, a lineup of like all the all-time greats. You've had like whole like 26-man rosters. You've had like an all Latino lineup. You've had just so many things. And so I'm just going to kind of do my little take on it. And of course, it's going to be like my all-time like starting nine for the Cardinals. And so anyway, so I hope you all enjoy it, and I'll just kind of start this off with like a lineup uh, to forewarn. Like I am going to use the DH. All right. Anyway, so batting leadoff, I got Lou Brock, and he's going to be my DH. His I think his defense kind of gets too much negativity around it, but he's not known as an outstanding fielder. So anyway, a one-time, all-time stolen base champ, one-time single-season stolen base champ, 3,000 hit club member. Lou Brock is going to be my leadoff hitter and playing DH. And so then for the number two hole, I want a guy that can hit. Right now, he's not necessarily known for power, so to speak, but he has some decent power numbers as well. And that's going to be my second baseman, Rogers Hornsby. And you see, I got his batter up card here. That's the back. Somebody wrote on it. Really cool stuff. But yeah, Rogers Hornsby, my second baseman, batting second. And then batting third, the greatest Cardinal of them all, right? I want him batting third because I want his bat to come up guaranteed first inning. And you know who I'm talking about. And that's Stan the Man. Guy did everything. Contact, power. If he had played in some different ballparks, he would have been a 500 home run guy. But triples, doubles, 3,600 hits. The guy just raked. Absolutely raked. So then the bat cleanup. Somebody who could have been mentioned in the same breath as Musial had he not left, but those first 11 years, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I was pretty fortunate to be a fan of the Cardinals and watch it. And that's Albert Pujols. Of course, that's who I'm talking about. Well over 3,000 hits, 700 home runs in his career. When he left for California, his career batting average was like 320 something. Absolutely amazing. But if you take into account, especially like just his Cardinals numbers, out of this world. Even that, he spent a decade away in Los Angeles and still almost had 500 home runs as a Cardinal. So he's playing first base. I think I forgot to mention it, but Stan, he's playing out in left field. This is early Stan we're talking about. All right, so now batting fifth. And this is where like the lower half of the batting order. I think I could have swapped some people around, but this guy's a lefty. Get a lefty in there. And I waffle on this, but here's my center fielder. And that's Jimmy Ballgame, Jim Edmonds. There's some talk about here and there, like, oh, should he be in the Hall of Fame? Obviously, I thought about Curt Flood, a very good offensive player in his own right, very good defensive player in his own right. But the power numbers and then just the unbelievable defense that Jimmy Ballgame brings to the table. And so it might be some recency bias, the fact that I got to watch him play, but it's my lineup, my pick, right? So center fielder, Jim Edmonds. And then now my third baseman, there's no choice. I love watching Scott Rowland play. I love watching Nolan Arenado play, but I have to go with Ken Boyer, the captain, World Series champion, MVP, put up solid power numbers, put up solid contact numbers, would drive guys in. So my third baseman, Ken Boyer. My right fielder, and it just so happened because I wanted to have good representation of the eras, and it just kind of worked out that way. But I'm going to go with the last Triple Crown winner in the National League, and that is Ducky Medwick. I have him playing in right field. Figure if you can play left field, you can play right field, right? But member of the Gas House Gang, Triple Crown winner, MVP, all that good stuff. Like, and he's my number 7 hitter. That's amazing stuff. And now these two guys, they're not at the bottom of the order because I think that they suck offensively, like some people want to lump them in to be. It's just look at the people ahead of them. I mean, Stan, Albert, Hornsby, Brock. I mean, come on, right? Anyway, my number 8 hitter, clutch hitter. In my opinion, the greatest catcher to ever play for the Cardinals. A little bit biased, yes, I understand that. We've had good catchers. We really have, Ted Simmons, being one of them that's in the Hall of Fame. And so, but of course, I have to go with Yadier Molina. Like I said, in my opinion, the greatest catcher that's ever played for the Cardinals. The defense, unparalleled. They said well over 2,000 hits. The defensive records, the offensive moments in the postseason coming in clutch, like I said, against the Mets, against the Braves, just amazing stuff. And it helps that, like, if I had to rank my all-time favorite players, like Yachty's like 1B. If you can't have ties, then I guess he'd be number 2. And, well, you know who my shortstop is. And again, we've had some really, really good shortstops as well. But, of course, I got to go with the Wizard. Unbelievable stuff. Like I said, almost 2,500 hits. A lot for a guy who can't hit. Iconic, postseason moment with his 85 home run against the Dodgers. The defense, again, you could argue that he's the greatest defensive player of any position in Major League Baseball history. But you start to get into opinions, analytics, and all that other stuff. All I know is he is a definitively great shortstop, right? And so that is my lineup, and if you notice too, I mean, like Albert, no slouch at first base, he won Gold Gloves there too. I said, I got it pretty well stacked for offense. I got it stacked for defense. I mean, shoot. Now, who's my starting pitcher? And of course, it's the Cardinals. There's only one definitive choice, and like I have all these great defensive players out in the field for a guy who doesn't even really need that. But I got to go with none other than Bob Gibson, right? That's going to be my starting pitcher. What can you say about him? He was the second person to ever strike out 3,000 batters. He had 260 wins. He had the postseason moments, 2-time World Series MVP. One of only a handful of people that have ever done that. He had the 18 strikeout game against the Tigers in the World Series. I mean, just dominating stuff. And so Bob Gibson is my starting pitcher. And I went ahead and picked a closer. Would Bob Gibson even need a closer? I mean, we're talking, especially like once we get to October, right? But of course, and there was actually some choice. Like I had to really think about this one, and for most people it'd be obvious, and I ended up going with the obvious choice. But the Cardinals have had great closers. I really wanted to go with Lee Smith, but because I really think that his Cardinals years were better than his Cubs years. Part of that too, though, is like you could say that the closer role went through rapid evolution between the 80s and the 90s. And so in the end, I went with Bruce Sutter, Major League Baseball Hall of Famer, yes. But at the same time, I know he can close the door when it counts the most because he closed out the 1982 World Series. And that's why that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. That's why I went with Bruce here as my closer. And then I just kind of wanted to throw out a couple things. Forgot to get a card out, but my favorite all-time manager. But this team's going to be managed by Tony La Russa. Great statistician, second all-time in Major League Baseball history in wins, three-time World Series winning manager, twice with the Cardinals. I don't know how much he really needs to manage this bunch, but he could sit down in the dugout and watch it. Now, being the kind of fan that I am, I know a lot of people want to watch the games on the TV. Go to the games if you can, of course. But I tell you right now, like my preferred method of taking in a ball game is actually the radio, and I think the current Cardinals crew does a really good job. But I want to be a fan while this team is playing, listening to Jack Buck. That I think would be phenomenal, of course. Yeah, I think that this team is great. Stacked offensively, stacked defensively. One of the greatest managers ever in the dugout. You got one of the biggest, or one of the greatest, big time pitchers in Major League Baseball history. You have phenomenal closer, Hall of Famer. I mean, like all these players are, we're talking about all Hall of Famers, could be Hall of Famers and things like that. And I guarantee you, if this lineup were assembled, what this Cardinals team would be doing? They'd be celebrating. That's for damn sure. So, anyway, I won't keep this too long. Like I said, Rob over at Comedy Cards, he had the VR. I really wanted to do it just because I wanted to, talk about, the greatest Cardinals ever. And I hope you all enjoyed it and nerd your own way.